for the NUCL tournament, I decided I would learn GSC NU, or at least learn it better than I currently know it. And that's for the simple fact that I think it's fun to just play test games of random old gens. I've also played a lot of GSC NU with Esterosa before on PS. Shoutouts to him. And I think it's always good when you can broaden your horizons. GSC NU has a bit of a bad rep, and I wanted to give it more of a thorough shot, just considering, hey, you know what? It's an NU tier. As the NU tier leader, I feel a little obligated to have knowledge of every NU gen. And so I made my own little personal VR. Now, obviously, as someone that has not played this format a ton, I would hesitate to take this as truth, but, I mean, you can compare it to the current VR, and it's not, like, unreasonable. So I feel like that was a pretty reasonable indicator for me personally that what I'm going on about here isn't really that off. Of course, you better enjoy the content, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, leave a like if you are already subscribed, comment down below. You play GSC NU at all? If you do, what do you like about it? Hit me up, man. Hit me up with it. So, S rank, I got Stantler, Wheezing, Zatu. Stantler, it just really freaking annoying as a lead. You got Hypnosis stuff that it does. It's also got EQ, which is pretty big for the normal types. A lot of these only end up running stab moves. So Stantler being really just easily fitting in. EQ, Return, Hypnosis, and then like a myriad of last moves, which is like Hypnosis, a light screen type thing, Curse. You can even drop Hypnosis and go light screen with Curse. Mon becomes real annoying then. You could even just go mono attack. I just think EQ is always good to make use of it. It's just really annoying though to deal with as a lead, because switching around it ends up being a lot more annoying. Look, one of the things that helps is at least Rest Talk's really common in this tier, so you can sleep fodder things and actually have an out with Sleep Talk. The problem is you have no idea when you're waking up. Unlike with Rest, where you can count the turns and figure out always when you're about to wake up, it doesn't work like it with Hypnosis, so there is still some risk factor to going something like, say, an Octillery, or like even a Rock type to try to catch the Hypnosis or the normal move. And since Stantler's really strong, a lot of the time when you're trying to Sleep Talk, you better be getting good rolls, you better be waking up quickly, or it just ends up beating you down. When using this mod, I felt consistently like no other lead exerts more pressure turn one. Like, you got plenty of strong and even just generally annoying leads in this format. Things like Wheezing, Octillery, Fearow, Ninetails, Persian, Rapidash, just to look at my early ranks and pick out a few. A lot of these mons are just really good at the lead because they're generically hard to take down, and you generally just do a lot turn one. Even if you're not outright Okoing something, you're still a pretty safe lead. They're also fast for the most part, which helps. Stantler, I just think, kind of takes it in a completely different direction, and the disruption from Hypnosis is certainly a huge part, but also, yeah, that offensive profile, just it's different. Wheezing up next too. I think Wheezing is maybe the closest thing to what you could call broken in the tier. It's certainly a really good mon, though. I don't think it's outright OP, but I think every team has to cognitively, like, accept what its Wheezing matchup will be as you load into the tier. This mon ends up being a coverage demon in Gen 2 because I think at this point it just didn't have a lot of the utility moves that it would become known for later. Like, there's no Taunt, there's no T-Spikes, there's no Will-O-Wisp, there's no Corrosive Gas if you want to look at Gen 8. There is Pain Split, though I don't really see Pain Split a lot. I hardly even see Rest Dog on this mon. It's actually kind of funny. But so commonly, you just see this mon roll up with Sludge Bomb, Thunder, Fire Blast, Boom, and instead of filling that traditional void we know it as for being a very nice stally disruptor type, no, it's just straight up a breaker with a lot of good defensive prowess too. You're checking Primeape, you're checking the normal types just because of how bulky you are as well. And you got that strong explosion that can even threaten some of these, like, you know, Porygon, Wigglytuff, Stantler after they've tried cursing up some. Like, you'll be faster for sure after that too, and you can go plow and maybe you kill them after a boost even. I think a lot of them you need a little bit of chip still, but he's very good at being an anti-BS Pokemon, especially when it comes to Primeape. That mon's annoying, so nice to have some guy that can shut it down entirely. We do see a lot of rock types get used, partly for Wheezing, so like you could see up here, Graveler, Shuckle, Sudowoodo, even Dugtrio, not a rock type, but ground type, does it. Ryhorn They all check Wheezing pretty decently, especially the ones that are also immune to Thunder. But there are Wheezings that'll literally just run Hidden Power and then smoke you. And it's like, damn, man, what was the point? I think the big thing that keeps Wheezing from being, like, absolutely too oppressive is Zatu is also really good, and naturally having a Psychic type that, admittedly, we don't really have resist for in the tier. You can answer Weezer helps. Obviously, you don't want to switch it directly into a Thunder or you're toast, but if you're able to get good positioning with Zatu, you can limit this mon pretty effectively through that. And Wheezing, at the end of the day, is still a Wheezing, so despite the lower power level of tier, it's not really two-shotting everything. So normally, you can get fine enough positioning versus it just through switching into mon that, like I said, doesn't get two-shot. It won't threaten back with a two-shot, but all of these mons also are rest talkers, and since Wheezing frequently isn't, you have a leg up on it. And when Wheezing is a rest talker, there's a lot of mons that just wall it, and then it loses boom as well, so it's much less threatening. And I got Zatu in S as well. Zatu's kind of weird. I bounced between having some mons in S and some mons not. Like Pineco I was thinking about as, Zatu I was thinking about maybe dropping out of S. I ultimately kept it though because this tier just doesn't have psychic resists. Like, Zatu frequently mirrors itself because it is the best psychic resist in the tier. And then you scroll down and you're like, oh, Magnemite! Wow! The Pokemon 25 base HP! I'm so excited to use Magnemite today, chat! And you keep scrolling. Oh, Houndour! I'll pursue it with my terrible, terrible Pokemon! Oh, Sneasel! Wow, incredible! Execute was up here too, but kind of just read into it that all the psychic checks are LC Pokemon. And most of them aren't particularly great either. So a lot of time, people are reliant on, kind of like with Wheezing, just going to a mon that's generically not 2-shot, sometimes not 3-shot, and hoping for the best. The main problem you run into, I think, is just Psychic special defense drops are quite annoying. And they do make answering Zatu a little bit more challenging because if you switch it and get dropped immediately, maybe you just have to switch again. And in a no team preview gen, information is key, and you don't want to have to reveal a ton about your team to the Zatu, like, just early on. So that can be a little bit challenging. The main thing that limits it from being broken, I think, in my eyes, despite Psychic being really, really strong in lower tiers because of, well, again, there's not good Darks or Steels, they're all up in OU. It's just that the bulk is still not amazing. Like, a lot of mods in this tier still feel like they're way bulkier than they should be, and that's just because it's another gen where you have maxed out EVs in every stat. So that kind of helps Zatu compensate, but end of the day, I mean, things like Wheezing, this has Thunder. Primeape, it has Thunder. Don't ask why. Persian has Thunder. Again, don't ask why. Fearow just generally does a lot of damage because it's a strong mon. Octillery, kind of the same thing. Things like Rapidash, Flareon, Ninetails, same thing. They do a lot of damage to Zatu and pressure quite effectively. So the main limiter ends up just being you can't throw it out versus literally anything. A lot of the time they will smoke your pack. And I do think that keeps it from being like S+, but to me at least, I still value it as an S rank mon. It's definitely the worst of the three here, but I think Zatu's a little bit more consistent and just a little bit more threatening than the guys in A+. Octillery though definitely has a case for being near Zatu in terms of strength. So I'll use that to segue down to A+. Mostly just because I think the standard Rest Talk set with Surf and Hidden Power Electric is really annoying to answer with any level of any level of consistency. Octillery is rather strong, and so some of the common Rest Talkers, like Primeape, Persian, they're taking a lot more from Surf than they would like. And if they get crit from Surf into a normal Surf, they just die. So you better hope as your Sleep Talk and you pull another Rest immediately, or you just lose the exchange. And then compared to like Dugong, it's really easy for Octillery to have Hidden Power Electric. So Dugong isn't really answering it. You get the wonderful mirrors like we were talking about with Zatu, where it's just two Octillery trying to HP Electric each other into the Shadow Realm. And with Dugtrio at a low point too, you're not even as worried about having riskier Sleep Talk pulls. Back when this mon was super meta, yeah, things like Dugong and even Azumarill were a lot better because they ran things like Surf, Ice Beam, Rest Talk, and then that means Dougie has a 2/3 shot at losing its sub. Octillery wasn't as in favor because it was running HP Electric more frequently. Didn't really want to have to go for Ice Beam just because of what it meant for your overall threat level. It just wasn't as good of a user of Ice Beam is essentially the best way I could put it. And so with Dougie down, that's helped boost Octillery a lot. Also because like Graveler's better now. The rocks are better. That's also boosted Octillery's profile. Because now it's bulkier than this guy, I think. Or no, it's not bulkier. It just doesn't, it's not weak to rock. So you answer like Graveler better, Sudowoodo better, even Ryhorn, I guess, better. And that does matter quite a lot for this mon's viability and how it separates itself from the other bulky waters in the tier. Yeah, I feel like it's really all I have to say about Octillery. It's just also all the fire types. You check them pretty well. You would think that it would be a big difference too that you're not neutral to fire compared to Dugong. I'm gonna be honest, it really doesn't matter. Dugong's better bulk ends up pretty much making up for it. Like, I double-edged a Dugong with my Rapidash. I did 30. Never felt more useless in my life. So that was fun. But yeah, I think it really just comes down to how strong it is. And then just not having that rock weakness, especially with how common these spikeless builds are getting nowadays. And part of that's why Pineco only an A+ instead of S. Now, yes, it's very weird to talk about Pineco, this little stupid Pinecone, as an elite Pokemon. But it is one. It is the best spike setter in the tier by a long shot, mostly because of resistances. And how many other spike... I mean, dude, Delibird and Omanite are like the only other options. I'm sure there's some other stuff too, but these are realistically what you may use in NU. And Pineco being able to be a Primeape check is kind of nice. It's also physically bulky enough to like kind of spike in front of something like a Stantler or a Persian, some of these other like strong normal type leads. Obviously, Fearow would pack you up, but that's beside the point. Also, having Explosion is really, really nice because even though you're a Pineco, Explosion is just so strong in Gen 2 that it's still going to get you a lot of progress. And I frequently just use this to boom in front of other teams. Like if I get my spike and I think they're going to a Pineco of their own, I'll boom on it immediately. They can't ever spin, and I get to keep my spike. Naturally, too, compressing both spike and spin is really, really cool. And there's not really ghost types in the tier either, so you have the leverage to just always spin when you want. Gastly is literally the only spin blocking option available. It is legitimately the only ghost that is down in NU. And Gastly isn't very good because its stats hold it back. So you end up having a pretty good amount of time. Pineco can get its spike and it can spin away the other spike, and there's not a lot your opponent can do about it most of the time. So why did I put it down in A+ instead of S? Well, like I said, spikeless builds. Graveler is really good in this tier, and Graveler pretty much defines the non-spikes builds. So I think because of how much better and more common they've gotten over time, you can't really put Pineco in S, because I don't think spikes define the tier like they once did in terms of being on every team. They still define it in every facet because, well, spikeless builds see the fact that they don't have spikes, but they have a spinner instead to deny the opponent from keeping theirs up. So that is a real thing. But I think the omnipresence of like each team just defaulting to Pineco wars being gone kind of shows how the tier's transitioned away from Pineco as a mon and how it used to define the tier with certainty. Like, there for sure is a world where you could argue still Pineco to S, probably over Zatu, but I don't think it's on that level anymore. And as the fire types as well get more prevalent, especially as leads, it's just... it's more annoying and more annoying, and just, I mean, hell, it puts more of an onus on players to use Graveler even. And just say, fuck it, I don't need spikes. I'm gonna use big Gravingtons. Also cool that Graveler beats up on Gastly super, super easily. Gastly ain't doing shit to you, dude, and dying to an E. It's like generations upon generations of Gastlys are folded up by this thing's Quake. So that's cool. Primeape next up in A+. I thought about S ranking it, and then I moved it down. I was talking to some of my teammates. They kind of gave me enough reason to put it in A+, and I thought even about A. But I think Primeape is really annoying to face, just because, dude, the most common sets, Cross Chop, Thunder, and in Rest Talk. Like, why is this Primeape taking on a defensive role? It's because of EVs. I hate it so much, but it's where we are. Basically, every Primeape sequence is that it gets in, and then it immediately goes for Thunder, predicting one of Zatu, Wheezing, or Pineco to switch in. I hate it so much, but it's so funny to, like, watch as a spectator and even play out. Because, I mean, yeah, your Thunder doesn't do a lot, but you do, like, you do north of 30 to Wheezing, and Paralysis is quite huge to get on that mon in this tier. especially if it ever lets you deny an explosion. But all that negate that. So why is Primeape this high? Well, Rest Talk does end up meaning that it oftentimes can pivot into some of these special attackers relatively okay. And we're thinking mostly the bulky waters here. You still do take quite a lot, and it's like how we talked with Octillery, how some of these mons get crit once and then they are definitely losing the exchange. You better pray you are getting another rest from your sleep talk. It's still not the worst for Primeape in terms of just how it finds chances to come in on mons like Octillery, Ninetails, Dugong. And these are good chances to break for, you know, however effective it is. It's also nice because a lot of these cursed normal types are one crit away from just dying to cross chop. So I was playing a game actually earlier versus someone, and they had a cursed Wigglytuff. And it was at like +2. I had just done like 35 to it with a cross chop, and the next turn I crit it and it died. So this mod's kind of like, basically it's the ultimate scam Pokemon. And I mean this for a lot of reasons. It scams people out of wins by critting through their normals. So Porygon, Wiggly, Stantler, there's other normals I'm sure here that you can see. I'm not going to look for them. It paralyzes things like Wheezing, Pineco, Zatu, costs them turns, and scams you out of wins there. On the flip side, it scams you, the Primeape player, out of wins because your moves all miss. That's probably the worst part about using Primeape. It's still not as bulky as you'd like it to be, sure, but also just the unreliability that comes with it because of how all of its moves are so inaccurate definitely sucks. And definitely makes it a lot harder to use as well. So couple that with the fact that if you look at A, I mean, you got things like Persian, Fearow, Ninetails. All these are just faster than Primeape too. There are some builds you will run into where there are just several mons faster than it. And then you'll also have to contest with like the obligatory Wheezing Zatu on the other team. Rapidash as well. I don't even know why I didn't mention that. And it just makes using this mod a lot worse. It really does. It makes it a lot tougher to justify Primeape. Or not justify it, just makes it harder to call it like top of the meta. Top of the morning to you. Because you run into like litanies. You'll run like a team which is like half mons or just 100 base speed or better. And you're like, ah, yes. I can't wait to find all my opportunities to come in versus. Oh, and against there. Oh, and also this. You know, that type beat. But I do think that it offers a lot of good to the tier 2. It is still relatively fast, all things considering. And Thunder being able to kind of negate a lot of defensive options. Or even just catch things for damage. Like, something like Zatu is 2-shot by Thunder, sure. But the bigger thing is just threatening things like Wheezing with a paralysis. Pineco even with a paralysis. I think that's going a long way for it. Then we get to A rank Dugong. I think Dugong is like strictly worse than Octillery. It's just still good enough though at threatening teams. Having dual stab on Ice Beam Surf is really nice. You're never gonna run into teams really without a bulky water, but in a theoretical world where you did, Dugong would probably smurf the entire matchup because your opponent's gonna be relying on Pokemon like say Primeape, Restock Stantler, Restock Persian, Porygon Wiggly to try to deal with Dugong. And yeah, they're like one freeze away from throwing their keyboard, not even just their keyboard, their entire computer out the window. So it's pretty good for that. I just hate using Dugong myself because it makes you so much weaker into Pokemon like Primeape and Graveler. And that's really been the limiter I've had with it. I think the ice typing defensively does kind of mess you up. It requires a lot of extra support from like say something like a Stantler, maybe even a Reflect Stantler, or pairing it with one of the grass types of the tier. And dear God, these mons aren't very good. I don't think they're ass, but they're kind of tough. So kind of hard to support, but I think there's a lot of offensive potential with the Gonger. It's not even like the worst growth pass recipient from Flareon. And by not the worst, I mean you could technically be using a Chinchou instead, and that would for sure be worse. Fearow and A, mostly due to speed. I do think Fearow struggles in a much more Graveler-heavy metagame, but it's not too hard to support Fearow. You got a lot of fire types that force damage on the Graveler, and Graveler doesn't run rest like a lot of other mons do because it needs a lot of its move slots. So chip you get on it will stick, and I think that helps Fearow out long-term quite a bit. We're trying to do literally anything with it. It's also one of the faster leads we got. I forget the base speed exactly. It's either 100 or 105, though. Naturally, compared to other leads, faster than Stantler, faster than the Pinecone, faster than Zot, faster than Wheezing. You're just not taking that trade. Really, the only things you're super worried about at lead in terms of speed are like Persian and Dash. It's not even that bad for it. like I was saying, I think just the bigger issue for it is the increased trend in usage of or the trend of increased rock type usage, as you just don't have any move to hit them with. In Power Ground isn't worth bothering with, because you'd rather Rest Talk just because it gives you more turns to keep double edging and drill pecking and then resting. So instead, you just see that you're running dual stabs, walled by Graveler, and pair it again, like we said, with something like an Octillery, a Stantler, Pokemon like that can either chip away at the ground types or check them outright. Even like things like Ninetales and Dash are good for that as well for partners. Cool mon though. Also, it's a ground immunity, so if you need to pivot around things like Graveler and Dougie, technically you get that. Graveler and A, I think its offensive profile is excellent. So many top mons are weak to its dual stab, and even though, because of, one, it's a Graveler, so it's pretty weak, but two, a lot of these Pokemon are bulkier than they would be in future gens, it does end up still helping Graveler pressure teams quite consistently. I would say most teams end up needing to have one of like Stantler, Octillery, or like Porygon, just to not feel really Graveler weak. I mean, there's some other options too, for sure, like the grass types exist. Even something like Kingler is pretty reasonable. But I think it does a really good job of pressuring these builds, and of course it spins super easily into Pineco. Obviously you don't like getting toxic, and even like Giga Drain, which is admittedly pretty rare, can mess you up too. But I think it's still a pretty straightforward exchange, and like rock types having trended upward over the time, fire types are also really common, especially with Rapidash picking up in usage a lot in recent months / recent year. So having a mon that checks that pretty decently helps, and it can take some pressure off your water type, prevent it from always having to be the most telegraphed switching of all time. Ninetales up in A, it's a very fast mon, and I think that's the biggest thing. Checks all the other fire types really well. It's got Roar, so that synergizes nicely with Spikes. It could also help out if you're in real need of a panic answer to a normal type that's boosting up. Toxic's also just generally useful because you can force rests, and that can always give you good positioning, even with how rest talk mons are so frequent. So they'll just sleep it off and then talk in their sleep, mutter some terrible words at you for toxicking them. It doesn't end up being the biggest deal ever. Toxic also increasingly more and more useful with Porygon picking up in usage, since Porygon has Recover, so you're not going to bother with the rest. Being able to get a poison off on that is really cool. Poisoning Graveler is good. Poisoning, hell, Pupitar is good as well, because this doesn't run rest. It runs dual stabs and its Screech Ancient power for the most part. Even poisoning a Stantler, because these don't always go rest talk. These, like we talked about earlier, they run a lot of like Hypnosis and then return EQ filler. So a poison on that mon potentially is sticking, and that's also really good. Persian, it's like, I think Persian is literally the fastest mon in the tier, so that alone is huge for it. Gains a lot of usefulness from that. It's also a good disruptor like Stantler, because you got moves like Hypnosis, Thief, Thunder. All are really useful from a lead slot. And then similar to Primeape, it plays itself as a kind of frailer, but still decent enough rest-talking soft check to some special attackers like Octillery, Dugong, Ninetails, I guess technically Dash. Main issue for Persian, I think, is just if you're not Thief or Hypnosis, you're seeding entry into like Graveler 24/7, as well as some other options like Ryhorn and Sudowoodo, which admittedly, it's not like it's impossible to answer these mons. It's just kind of shitty when you have that momentum sap at points happening. So that's things you got to be cognizant of in your building. Porygon, it's very funny to see it this high, but Curse, Recover, T-Wave, Double Edge is legitimately really good. I kind of prefer it to Wigglytuff at this point, just because when I use Wiggly, I feel way worse off having to go for those rest talk rolls. With Porygon, I don't have to bother. It just requires a little bit of that, extra mental, where you realize, okay, there's going to be some toxic Pokemon like Pineco and Ninetales that I have to care about. Just play safer around those. Understand if you get thundered and paralyzed, that paralyze is staying on you for the rest of the game. It's not too big a deal, though. Also, a fine enough check to Graveler, which is kind of weird to say, considering you run just Double Edge. But the main thing is, once you start cursing, Graveler isn't doing enough damage to really threaten you. Obviously, crits can play a factor, but with how we talked about how easy it is to chip at Graveler, I'm not really worried about that kind of thing long term. and most of the time you're just trying to force a boom. So if you can do that, pretty reasonable. And we got Mr. Do the Dash last. And like Persian and Ninetails, just a very nice fast lead. Frequently you get stalemated, not even stalemated, you get checkmated by water types, but forcing them in, pretty easy to do. And then you're gonna have plenty of switch-ins as well for them. Also kind of cool that, what's it called? Dash pressures Zatu really nicely. Pressures Wheezing as well, because it's a mixed attacker, so Fire Blast is doing north of 40, I'm pretty sure. I remember doing like 44 or something to Wheezing. It felt real good. So, another good way to pressure that mon. Dugtrio down to an A-. This mon used to be the best mon in the tier by a long shot. No one questioned it. Nowadays, it's not nearly as good, but it's still a really solid mon in my view. Instead of sub Swagger, though, it does like sub Screech, which not as great. I think also just sucks the tier is so bulky around it, and this is kind of one where it got worse for it, I feel. Octillery is just a better mon than Azumarill. So now that that's the mon switching into you, it's just kind of like, ugh. Gotta deal with people using good mons? Yuck. Plus, it's not nearly as good of a Wheezing answer as the other grounds are, or the rocks that see usage in its place, like Pupitar, Ryhorn, Sudowoodo. So that kind of takes away some usefulness. And in general, I would just say Dugtrio builds are a little weaker into the fire types. You're still going to be able to fit plenty of answers to them. It just feels like in general, Dugtrio builds are worse off defensively because you are willingly putting a mon on your team that offers you essentially nothing on that front in a format where you are consistently rewarded for greeting out for bulk where you can. So, speed still is a huge thing for it. I said Persian was the fastest mon on the tier. I may have been wrong. I think it's Dugtrio. I can't remember speed tiers off the dome like that, but regardless, I mean, it is super fast. And there are some builds that do forget Dugtrio exists in the tier, where you end up having a lot of pressure, especially when you get a spike up. That was always Dugtrio's big thing back years ago when I played more GSC NU, where Spike's Dugtrio was just constantly a pain in the ass because you had sub Swagger. So you got your Spike, and then you spammed out Swagger, or Screech even back then, and you just kept forcing switches, and it was really good at racking up that damage, and with a Spike up a lot of the time, people were hard-pressed to actually switch into you, because you were turning some 3-hit KOs into 2-hit KOs. Especially if you had like a little chip prior, there were some mons that you admittedly needed that for. And even at the time, you could pretty clearly see why Dougie would be good. These three here, Wheezing, Zatu, Pineco, have remained great through the years. Rock Slide EQ, hey, you had super effective coverage for literally all of them, so. A lot of time, the way Dugtrio played out was Zatu would hope to always switch into an EQ, and then 2-shot was Psychic. Because you weren't 2-shot and returned by Rock Slide. So you gotta see the fall off there, it's pretty clear. Flareon and A-, the big difference between it and Dash, because they run the same moveset most of the time, that Fire Blast Double Edge Rest Talk, is Flareon is a lot better special bulk, and a lot better of attack. So there's some calcs of Flareons with Double Edge where you are just murking stuff. Doing like actually about 50 at times. Like if Spike is up, you are 2-shotting things, and where Rapidash will fail to. I forget, I think Primeape might have been one of them that I was looking at earlier. But you're also, of course, naturally pressuring then Octillery a lot better, Dugong even a lot better. Ninetails you pressure really, really well. And I think really the only reason you don't see Flare more often is because the special bulk doesn't actually matter a ton. Like, you're marginally better into Zatu, which is cool. But Dash is already pretty good into Zatu as long as you ignore the chance to get special defense dropped. You're not really that much better into the rock types either. Like, you are certainly faster, and not faster, you're certainly stronger, I mean. And that matters, you get more chip. But it's not enough to where it really fundamentally changes the matchup. So you kind of just end up with slower mon a lot of the time. And the speed does matter. I mean, you're losing out on mons like Stantler, which is huge. Primeape, huge. Persian, no, not Persian, that mon's already faster. Fearow was another one of them. Because Fearow is definitely slower than Rapidash, and even if it's not, you're gonna just acknowledge that it is for the sake of me not looking dumb, okay? Shut up, Jalen Walker. Let me find a team real quick. Fearow, 100. And in Rapidash, I just gotta show you all this so you know I'm not crazy. Where are you? Yeah, 105. Thank God I'm not dumb. So there's a good few mods that you lose out on speed-wise, and that's kind of why I also have Flareon a little lower. Also, though, like, the physical defense is actually a little bit lower as well compared to Dash, which marginally matters when you're looking at switching into opposing fire types. Like, you do more in the matchup yourself, sure, but if you ever have to switch into one, you do take a little more. It's not by much. Like, we look at Flareon's bulk here. It's, 6560. Rapidash is 6570. So it's a 10 base point swing in defense. Probably not gonna change the world, but something to keep in mind. Both Pupe and Sudowoodo and A-, they're rock types that do a lot of the same as Graveler. But with Pupitar, the point's more that you have Screech, so you stunt really hard on the normal types, compared to Graveler, which does not. Like, it still is an okay enough check, it's just, you know, Curse defense boost is affected. With Pupitar, they don't. Pupe also has sweeping potential with Ancient Power, which I understand if you hear that and you're like, bro, what are you smoking? Why are you running Ancient Power? The thing is, it doesn't really get a lot of moves. Either is Gen 2. Pokemon don't learn moves. They really don't. Not as bad as RBY, but there's still some ones with some pretty noted move pool issues. And so Pupitar doesn't have things like Dragon Dance that it gets in later gens, where it actually ends up being a good NUmon in ADV. So instead, we are allowed to Screech Ancient Power stuff to give it some sort of niche. Sudowoodo, I think the main thing is just the random hidden power coverage types you may run into, and I mean random because you really don't see a lot of it, but you're not going to be struggling into like a Wheezing hidden power as much as something like Pupitar would or Graveler, because instead of having a quad weakness, you only have a normal weakness. That does help. Same if like you're running into a fire type that techs it. And probably a noted thing, Sudowoodo could do Rest Talk a lot more effectively than the other rock types can, which is marginally helpful just in terms of not caring about Toxic. But it doesn't mean you're giving up on Boom, which other Sudowoodo sets can fit. There's some give and take there. I don't think it's a great mon, but I do think that in terms of rock types, it's probably functionally good enough to still be an A-. Out of all these, I think Sudowoodo might be the one I'd be closest to putting in B+, though. And then we rounded out Wigglytuff. This is probably just a bit of a biased take. I didn't like Wigglytuff, though, when I was using it at all. I felt with it, the Rest Talk stuff was, like, really noted in limiting it. Wigglytuff, one of the big things it does have, and this kind of applies to all the normal types, is its bulk is laughable. And I mean that in a good way. It is insanely bulky relative to them. So you do switch into the water types with even more ease, and you've got Sweeping Threat. It's just, I don't know, man. There's something about this mon that I cannot vibe with nearly as hard as I would like to. But it goes back even to the Primeape thing. That mon doesn't even one-shot you with Cross Chop. You want to see Porygon get one-shot by a Cross Chop? I promise you, you can find it happening. Stantler probably also gets real close after a spike. It may after a spike just die. So bulk is important for Wiggly, but its coverage is pretty ass in terms of its physical move pool. So that's why you see Stantler and even Lickitung having some good success over it. It doesn't have the instant recovery like Porygon. So it's kind of just a weird blend of like Lickitung plus Porygon in a way, where you're a mono attacker that's pretty bulky. The bulk's helpful, of course, and you get a Body Slam to spread paralysis, kind of further making this comp work really well. But there are some struggles. I think that it ends up being pretty solid regardless, just because of that bulk, though. You definitely are dedicating to a long game, though, with Wiggly. Even Porygon, but Wiggly especially. B+ stuff, Chinchou, this mon definitely is a bit of a relic of a meta past. It used to be really, really good, and nowadays it's like, okay, but what if I used a water type with bulk? Right, chat? It's like Octillery, for example, 75-75. Chinchou, 75-38. So, and you can even compare it to Dugong as well, where Dugong's at 90-80 bulk. So double edges from fire types? Yeah, ouch. Those hurt a lot. So Chinchou doesn't really appreciate that at all. It is nice because it, in terms of bulky water matchups, oh yeah, you smoke those mirrors. You got Thunder, and it's not like Octillery and Dugong are beating you down with their moves. It's just kind of switching into anything else is like, damn, man, why are you asking that much of me? I'm an LC Pokemon, didn't you know? So that kind of sucks for it. Grass types not being too common help, but otherwise I think you're just better off with the other water types. I don't feel like the mirror matchup really ends up carrying. Plus, look at, I mean, it's not like this mon's strong. 56. Again, compared to Octillery, 105. Dugong's only 70, but, I mean, Dugong is just so much bulkier. Carries it quite a lot. Dragonair. Oh, this was the one I was thinking about the Flareon calc versus. This one takes like 50 from Flareon Double Edge, but the other fire types, you can take it a little bit better. It's like 40, so there's, other fire types just means Rapidash. I'm trying to remember, if you take 40, you're still 3 KO'd, but you do have a chance to do something in return with Surf. Like, if you T-Wave and Surf spam, you potentially beat it down with, just sheer luck. I think with Dragonair, it's mostly just this mon actually has a move pool to work with, which is why I don't rate it too lowly. And you still check fire types, but also you check Octillery running Surf HP Electric, which is admittedly pretty useful for finding turns to just, like, do things like set up a screen. It gets both screens. There's Light Screen, there's Reflect. It's got a really good special move pool. It's like Bolt Beam, Fire Blast, all those moves. Toxic, T-Wave if you care about status. It's got a lot that you can do with it, and if you care about running like Growth Baton Pass on Flareon, yes, this learns Growth, don't ask me why or how. There's some stuff you could open up with Dragonair there, I'm sure too, by setting up screens and making it easier for this to maybe get a couple boosts. But I feel like it implies you're like directly switching Flareon into something on a following turn. So maybe it's not too easy. I don't know. Admittedly, this mod is probably more like down here. But we're going to keep it up here. We're going to stand on what I originally said. Not bad. Kingler, B+. This mod is admittedly just a guy I need to try and use a bit more. It's like the best Sword Stance user tier has. It's just, God, Kingler does not have coverage yet. So you're forced to rely on like Return and Hidden Power, I guess, Ground? And that's about all you got. And then compare it to the other waters, and yeah, it doesn't have special bulk. It's got physical bulk. But even like a Primeape Thunder does so much more. It's like, why am I here? Like, once again, I will compare you to your brethren. Octillery, 75-75. Not too bad. Kingler, 55-50. So Primeape Thunder literally two-shots you. You may think, oh, I could switch into Primeape and get boost because its Cross Chop won't two-shot me. No, you know, it doesn't work like that, champ. I mean, in some ways, it's not even the worst check to the fire types still, but God, you take even more from Fire Blast from them. Sure, you take Double Edge better, but who cares, dude? You're getting 40'd by Fire Blast. Seek help. And I mean, God, even the rock types aren't a bad check to you because a lot of time you're not running a water move to complement your Sword Stance. Actually, no, you can. You got a third move slot. And a lot of it's like, do you want to go sub with Sword Stance or do you want to go Sword Stance 3 attacks and then decide, yep, I need Surf. Or Crab Hammer, whatever water move it gets at this point. Magmar was like okay when I used it. I didn't hate it. It's got cool coverage, and if you go Sunny Day, then you kinda just stunt on some of these water types. Like, you set up the Sun, and an Octillery Surf actually doesn't 3-shot you, I believe, even? It probably still is a 3-shot. I forget. I need to see the calc again, but I remembered 1v1ing an Octillery with Magmar. Because I got a little bit of luck, obviously, on Sleep Talk. But Magmar actually just set the Sun and didn't care from there. Otherwise, it naturally offers a lot less than the other fire types because they're faster, or in Flareon's case, a lot stronger plus bulkier. But move pool wise, Magmar has some cool stuff it does. Having Thunder Punch as coverage is pretty cool because you don't have to compromise your DVs with Hidden Power. You still will, you still run Hidden Power, or go Cross Chop, either's fine. I think actually Cross Chop's a little bit better, but I digress. It's just kind of nice that you have the coverage for those Pokemon naturally in your move pool. Magnemite B+ as well. This mon's very cope, but it's a Zatu check, and I'm gonna be real, in this tier, Zatu checks are pretty cool. Chinchou is also completely absent from the tier nowadays, so hey, your best answer... I don't even know what to say Chinchou's a good answer to you, though, because Thunder isn't resisted. It's just kind of like... You'd rather face a water type that Thunder just obliterates than one that it doesn't, you know? But yeah, Magnemite pretty much is just here. It's a Persian check. Technically, it's a normal type check if they're not Stantler, too. And then it's a Zatu check. I'd say it's a Wheezing check, but it's only a Wheezing check if they're Rest Talk. If they are the standard 4 attacks, you are dying to Fire Blast, and there's nothing that I can do about that for you, man. Pidgeot B+, I don't really like Pidgeot, but I think it's okay as a lead with Reflect. Its special bulk is honestly not even that bad naturally, and Reflect can help shore up some of the interactions versus like Wheezing, Stantler. Potentially helps if there's like a Graveler on the other team that comes in and your water type's a Dugong. Like there's probably some route you could take there. That's kind of it though. Mono double edge on this mon is kind of meh. But I'd probably rate it more highly than the mons I put in B, so there you go. And then Shuckle, we have a B+. It is the biggest screw you Pokemon to any normal type because you are so bulky. You will Toxic them, you will then Defense Curl up to +6, and you will begin a rollout. And for some reason it works. It's very funny. It is very, very funny. I don't think Shuckle is particularly splashable, but it's a veritable good mon, man. It is a veritable good mon. Some B stuff. Bayleaf's fine enough on stall builds. Wall's the most common Octillery set, which is cool. It's a Graveler check, which is, of course, really cool. It actually can set up with I have a team from B in my builder. Where are you? These are all these other teams. Don't look at those. It literally doesn't matter. This team's funny. Where was it? She mag on my Martelite Blast. That was a good one. Yeah, this team right here. SD Return Toxic Synthesis. It's actually like kind of a decent sweeper. And then you have Toxic to cripple the most common of the normal resist Pokemon, which is really helpful as well. Wheezing's the roadblock, of course. So you're gonna have to figure out a way around that. But again, checking like Dougie, Graveler, Pupitar all in one slot is pretty nice. Not a great check because you don't have a move to hit them with other than Dougie, but you can Toxic it, and it's... Again, none of these run rest, so it's not bad. You can even just Toxic some of the fire types, and yeah, a lot of them are rest talkers, but better to make them waste that turn than to just give them free reign. Delibird B. Delibird's kind of weird to me because I think it's not bad. Spikes are just fundamentally really solid in the tier. But as Spikesless have gotten even better, Spikesless has gotten even better, I mean to say, as an archetype. And as fire types have gotten even better too. I think the opportunity cost to Delibird is just lower or higher and higher. And you may wonder, why don't I think the fire types hurt Pineco at all? Well, I mean, they do. I just think Pineco is a better Pokemon. So how much they hurt it is less compared to Delibird, because Delibird's got to try and justify a slot over this. If this could run Spikes and Rapid Spin on the same set, it would probably be a better mon. Low-key, it's probably more like this as well, if we're being honest, but it's like low B, low to mid B. The issue for Delibird, I think, just really comes down to Pineco. It can spike and spin in one slot. Delibird can't. Now, Delibird does have, like, a very noted niche, I would say, over Pineco. And it actually comes in the interaction with Graveler. Graveler can switch into Pineco and spin. Obviously, it doesn't want to get Toxicked, and God forbid you're Giga Drained. But you can win that exchange. It's not something you love doing, but you can do it. With Delibird, you get Ice Beamed and you die. I believe a Spike is all that you need to take for Delibird to OHKO you. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, not a great mon otherwise. Execute. I think Execute maybe could be okay in the future. Main thing is its stats are just still not great. Let me go back to this team up here. Like, defensively, on the physical side, it's okay enough, but it's not very strong. I think the main benefit to it would be that it's kind of a Zatu annoyer. This mon used to run Drill Peck all the time, then Zatu decided it wanted to win mirror matchups harder, and also it does a little more to water types this way, so it started going HP Electric. Well, HP Electric Psychic Sleep Talk with Rest is walled by Execute. So there's some theoretical world where this mod can check this. You still check Primeape well. Since you're Grass type, you wall the most common Octillery. You check Graveler well. You check, again, this guy, Pupitar, Dugtrio, Sudowoodo. I guess Chinchou if you care. that to me is enough to say, yeah, execute and B. I feel like there's something to this mon. It also learns Moonlight and Synthesis, but it learns Moonlight, guys. That's pretty neat. Gloom as well, a lot of the same defensive profile to execute, except it's it's neutral to ground and weak to Zatu, but still walls Primeape. Still checks the Octillery stuff like we mentioned. It also actually has sweeping potential with either of Swords Dance or Curse, which I do find to be worth attempting. If it did better into Wheezing, I would definitely use this mon more. But you're slower than Wheezing, and Fire Blast just does so much. Hidden Power Ground, I believe, doesn't even two-shot at +2, or it's like a roll. So there's just enough that limits it to where I really don't want to rate it that highly, but I think it's okay. Ryhorn and B. This mon is surprisingly bulky on the physical side. And you can go Curse Roar on it, so you can boost up alongside these normal types like Porygon and Wigglytuff, and it just phase them out. Potentially Stantler as well, depending on its set. So I think it's pretty cool alongside Spikes for that reason. It's also a Persian check, it's a Fire type check. I guess it's a Boom Absorber if you care. Fearow check, Pidgeot check. Checks a decent amount of stuff, honestly. It'll die to any special move, but that's not what it has to take. Fire Blast, I guess, counts there, but you don't take as much as you'd like. Kind of like Graveler, move slot issues are wacky if you want Rest Talk. I was like, you can do Rest Talk Roar, I guess, and then you're like, what, Mono EQ or Mono Rock Slide? It just sounds so bad. But I mean, I guess they're there. You could do like Rest Talk, Dual Stabs, but again, then I think you actually will just outwardly lose. You could do Rest Talk Curse, I guess, and in your Mono attack, which, not amazing, but probably more passable than Rest Talk Roar. At the very least, then, if you're Mono EQ, you could just try and play the game of beat down Zatu with something else, and then this Mono could do something for you later. But yeah. And in Tentacruel B, it has a spot on bulky teams for spinning, which is cool. I really haven't used Tentacruel enough to say anything about it, or faced it enough. So, I faced one with Rap Screech, though. That was really funny. That was very funny. Kind of annoying. My Primeape was taking like 40 from Sludge Bomb at -2 defense. But, yeah, I mean, fighting checks are always kind of decent. Even if Primeape has Thunder, it still has to hit its Thunders. So, not the end of the world. Checks some of the fire types, like Ninetails especially is the big one here. It can't do anything to you. And then, of course, still checks the water types. Shits all over Dugong and Octillery. Not the greatest exchange, but it's okay. Gastly and B-. Gastly is literally the only spin blocker that exists. So, since Pineco is very common, hey, I could spin block Pineco. That's cool. You know, maybe you have Pineco plus Gastly on a team. You can get your own spike and then spin block the other person. It's about all it does. I feel like the biggest difference you could showcase with Gastly and why it's not very good is compared to Haunter, which did used to be in NU, but it's a meta that looks nothing like what we're showing you here. Gastly is always two-shot by Wheezing, Thunder or Fire Blast, assuming it hits, but it's always two-shot. Psychic from Gastly never two-shots in return. Haunter, always two-shots with Psychic, and is never two-shot in return. Actually, Gastly can two-shot Wheezing with Psychic, but it's unfavorable. So I feel like that's the best way you could put it. Plus, again, the Thunder stuff. Wheezing does a lot. Primeape two-shots you with Thunder as well. Yeah, you're just so fragile, man. Like, Persian Thunder is going to do a billion as well. I'm trying to think of anything else you may pivot into and then get, like, clapped up. Obviously, Stantler Earthquake would kill Haunter, but God forbid a Gastly try to tank that. Pretty much any mon you think Gastly might switch into, I promise you, if it learns a coverage move, it takes half. Minimum. Hitmonchan B-, because on stall it can spin. Kind of the same as Tentacruel. Like, they have stall spots. And that's really the only spot I would use a Chan on. Hitmonchan, I don't really know where I want to put it, but I think B- is the fairest. I think it's actually the best of the Hitmons. At first I had it down in D, and then I realized, no. Because Hitmonlee and Hitmontop are far worse. Far worse Pokemon. Hitmonlee, I don't know why it's in NU. Either this mon's genuinely horrible. At the very least, it's very mid. The niche, in theory, compared to Primeape, and once again, I could show you stats. Primeape, faster and stronger. Actually, not even stronger, but faster. Hitmonlee, in theory, it's stronger. And I guess a little bit better on the special bulk. It doesn't end up mattering though, because your coverage sucks. You get fighting moves, and then you get like hidden power stuff, and that's pretty much it. Hidden power rock doesn't even two-shot Zatu. What are we doing? What was the purpose? Why did I load this mon? Oh, Wheezing's here, I lose? Okay. Don't even have thunder. Okay. Like, I just genuinely don't see the reason to use Hitmonlee ever on a team. I faced one recently that was like Thief and Return. And I mean, yeah, it was, I guess, annoying losing my item, but dude, that mon did dicks for damage. What are we here for? I really don't like Hitmonlee. In theory, some rest talk stuff could be okay because of the special bulk. So you will just take on some Pokemon better than Primeape does, like the water type specifically. I feel like that's the only niche it really has. It's also slower than Zatu compared to Primeape, which speed ties Zatu. So, you know, that sucks. Houndour, it pursuit trap Zatu, and that's about all you could ask of this. If you have a team that you really hate Zatu into, you technically can use Houndour. Or if there's a set you're trying to use that really needs Zatu gone, you technically can use Houndour. Because of how good Zatu is and how prevalent it is, I think being able to pursuit trap it somewhat reliably automatically gets you a kind of high ranking. If Zatu wasn't in the tier, Houndour wouldn't even be ranked. But it is, so here we are. Lickitung. So Lickitung basically is like Stantler if it was a lot bulkier. It gets EQ plus normal type coverage, and it gets Sword Stance, I believe, as well, right? I need to check out if it gets Sword Stance in this gen or if that's next gen. Let me cook, though. Yeah, it gets Sword Stance, so that's cool. Obviously, you can Curse Boost as well, but that is a pretty useful niche to have over Stantler, being so much bulkier while still having the coverage. It's not as good of a lead because it doesn't get to sleep things, and it's a lot slower. But you take notably less damage from a lot of the mons that try pivoting into you. So, like, Wheezing, for example, does a lot less to you. Pineco Boom will do less to you. Primeape will have a harder time cross-chopping you into the Shadow Realm if you get defense boosts than it will with Stantler. Naturally, though, the issue in return is, well, you compare that attack, 55! Stantler's 95, so that sucks. But having the same coverage is cool. C rank, and at this point, these are all pretty shit mons, so I'm not going to say a lot. Plus, the video is almost an hour, so I don't want to take up more of your time if you're still watching. Azumarill was good back when it needed back when teams needed a bulky mon that could reliably pop Dugtrio sub. Teams don't really need that anymore, so Azu I have in C. Corsola, I just personally think Curse Recover with Edgequake sounds cool. Or maybe you drop Earthquake for Surf. I don't know. Leave me alone, though. This is my pocket pick. Deal with it. Hitmontop. It's pretty bulky all around. It got a win in NU CL this week with a Curse High Jump Kick mono attacking set. I just personally can't justify putting a Hitmontop ever high on a VR. Especially in the tier with Zatu, Wheezing, Pineco all really good. Like, I guess Wheezing to an extent and Pineco don't even matter because you're resting up on them, and Wheezing won't break you at a point. So it's mostly Zatu. I just don't really trust Hitmontop, dude. Cubone, it's literally because it gets Baton Passed speed and it runs Thick Club. And it's actually kind of decent under those circumstances. That's all. And I believe Farfetch'd I put in C because of Baton Pass stuff too. I was trying to remember what the hell this mon did. I believe it was Baton Pass though. D rank. So C rank was like these mons in theory have some niche that you may want sometimes. D rank was these mons in theory have some niche, but I don't think you'll really want it ever because of like competition. So like Arbok in theory does some of the same stuff as Wheezing, but it's frankly noticeably weaker. Worse coverage and a lot frailer, so it doesn't really do a lot. I have some para-spam team with like Confuseray Zatu and a Glare Arbok. This Arbok, if Arbok's sub was not broken by Wheezing Thunder, I do think it'd be an okay mon. That's not the world we live in, so yeah, shaboing. Omanite, it's a rock type with spike. So resist normal, can spike up. In theory, that sounds cool sometimes, but then you realize you're using an Omanite, and these are its stats. It honestly probably checks the fire types really well for what it's worth. But I digress, man. I'm just not sure about it going higher. Poliwhirl can belly drum. That is quite literally all it does. I have not seen a belly drum Poliwhirl in a long time, so it may not even be worth D ranking, man. Frankly, anything in D or below isn't really worth using to begin with. Maybe Sneasel's okay, but eh. Raticate, it's kind of got an okay speed tier. It's base 97 or 98, I forget which. 97, it's 97. I'm an ADV player, I know that. God, but that's about it. Otherwise, there's so many other normal types, just use one of them. Sneasel, it's pretty fast and bothers Zatu. It also has some really stupid stuff it can do, like Dynamic Punch, Toxic Moonlight. Yeah, fast Mon that beats Zatu can't be that bad. And then Venomoth, I'm gonna be honest, y'all. I put Venomoth here because this Mon is kind of fast with a sleeping move. It can't be bad. I'm sorry, it just can't. Realistically, though, bro, we ain't using no damn Venomoth. And then F-rank stuff, I don't know what Ariados is supposed to do. Dunsparce, just use another normal. Furret, just use another normal. Ledian, in theory, by the way, Ledian is like something for... It's actually NU is hilarious. It's probably something for Baton Pass. It may actually even be the Agility Pass here that I'm thinking of. This guy may be Swords Dance Pass into something else, and I may have just confused the two. I mean, regardless, I think yeah, I was gonna say they're both actually on NU by usage. You mind, Pew does have a builder, as does Ziu. I don't know what he's supposed to do. Machoke, I really think with Machoke, it is just a matter of there's so many other fighting types that you should just use instead. Because they're fully evolved and Machoke is not. Mantine, I'm not using you over the others ever. Maybe Mantine is like vaguely on par with Azumarill. But quad weak to HP Electric sounds ass. Noctowl, dude, there's already Pidgeot that I'm giving a little too much credit to. I'm not giving you any credit. Seadra, I just don't see why I would use it this generation, where things are a lot bulkier. Or not bulkier. They're comparably bulky, though, I should say, to RBY. But they also now get to hold leftovers and spam rest talk. I don't know what game Seadra's winning with agility. Seeking, I don't know what you're doing ever. And same with Sunflora, Tangela, just... These are fully evolved grass types that I would not use over these mediocre non-fully evolved. So that should speak volumes about how ass they are. So yeah, there's my little GSC NU ranking. I hope all y'all enjoyed. If you play GSC NU, I'm so sorry if you feel like I'm bastardizing your tier. I will do it again, though. Well, see y'all next time. Have a good one.